dare I argue that Lue Elizondo actually brings balance to the conversation about non-human intelligence. Dare I argue that it's not good if everyone thinks or assumes that the phenomenon can do no wrong, has no self-interest, and presents no problems to the human species. How can we be objective about what's possible as it relates to the UFO phenomenon if everyone just becomes this big echo chamber repeating everyone else? And in fact, I think that's a huge problem with the cover-up. I think every single one of us is a victim of UFO culture echo chamber. Here's what I think is a very good example of that. What if the probability of non-human intelligence is that it's almost all just more advanced animals than we are? And the idea that NHI are all saints and can do no wrong might be a big mistake. Humanity might have to accept in a post-disclosure world that we're just not the apex predators anymore. And there are limits to what we can do to the world. There are limits to how we can protect ourselves. Now, let's move on to open contact, which I think is a very big issue. Is it not problematic that there are alleged abductions happening, even with the non-human intelligence doing all kinds of non-consensual things to, I'm going to call it the victim? And that they've been doing this for a long time, allegedly, but yet they're not willing to engage in open contact, to explain themselves, to explain why they're here, what their agenda is. I don't have the answers, but then again, neither do you, and that's the point. I think that part of the problem with the UFO community, as I see it, is a lot of us hold very strong opinions, but don't hold them loosely. So I would argue it's one thing to have a strong opinion, but when we have so little data, we should hold those opinions loosely. And that, I think, would go a long way in keeping us from moralizing other people's opinions or crowning ourselves as some kind of messiah for the UFO issue, teaching the confused masses what the truth is, when the messiah, the so-called messiah, doesn't know what's actually going on. They're just assuming the truth like everybody else. And I'll be honest, I do get annoyed by UFO culture echo chamber that we're all affected by. We just are. And I think that it's a very strong argument that non-human intelligence are animals like us. And just as they're animals, they have needs like us, desires like us. And some of those needs, some of those desires may conflict with our needs, our desires. To put non-human intelligence on this pedestal where it's all spiritual and all light, I just think that is so insanely biased. It's insanely biased. It's maniacal as far as I'm concerned. Especially if you look at the literature where abductions seem to be a very real reality. Now, I'm not claiming that human beings are more moral than non-human intelligence. I'm not claiming that. But I think it's very plausible that non-human intelligence is flawed just like humans are flawed, albeit more advanced. And maybe in some ways they are more spiritually evolved than us. But then again, does spiritual evolvement necessitate more objectivity? I don't know. I don't know. It's kind of like if someone with a higher IQ than someone with a lower IQ, is the person with the higher IQ always going to be more fair and objective? No, of course not. So someone who's more spiritually evolved, they may still not have all the answers. They may still perceive something as moral when it might not be. Maybe it's moral to them, but we as a species, the human species, may not perceive it that way. It is a problem, in my opinion, within the UFO community, how so many people seem to want to control the narrative and tell other people what the truth is. And what's ironic is that the US government doesn't want to acknowledge the weight of the situation. They don't want to tell you how advanced UFO craft are. They don't want to broach abductions. And anyone who thinks the US government is planning to create a false threat narrative to increase spending for the military, all they have to do to debunk that is look at Dr. Sean Kirkpatrick, who the DOD themselves selected. I am so sick of poor thinking within the community. It's so infused with ego because you want to believe this. It feels good to believe XYZ, so you put undeserved weight into those philosophies. And this is just the way that it is. But it's not necessarily your fault, or at least all your fault, or at least all my fault. I'm sure I fall into the same exact trap. We're all in a UFO culture echo chamber. All of us. If you really want to be objective about the phenomenon, I would urge you to hold your opinions loosely. Don't make yourself some kind of self-appointed messiah. You're just a human being like everybody else, and we don't have enough data. But like, getting back to the incredible irony I see is, people criticize Lue Elizondo for putting too much emphasis on the problems that the UFO reality might cause humanity. But the irony is, he's not working in step with the US government, because the US government doesn't even want to go there. If they did, would they have chosen Dr. Sean Kirkpatrick? I don't think so. What did Dr. Sean Kirkpatrick do working for Arrow? He downplayed the phenomenon every chance he got, saying that there's nothing to see here. The exact opposite of what Lue Elizondo is doing. Maybe, just entertain this possibility. Maybe we need to hear what Lue Elizondo is saying about the potential risks and concerns that the phenomenon might present, and does present, when you consider the number 6 observable. What is the 6th observable? Biological effects. Like with, I think his name is John Burroughs from the Rendlesham Forest incident. He's not the only one. Lue Elizondo said there are other people who the US government, as I understand it, is actually paying for their medical bills because of their interactions with UAP. Now, a lot of people don't understand the word threat. They hear the word threat and they automatically assume it must be an intentional harm. No. Something can be a threat without it being intentional. If you're driving on a road with ice that's icy, that ice can be a threat to your safety, regardless of whether that ice is intending to cause you harm or not. And so, I think we really need to dig deep and become as spiritually and psychologically mature as we can muster as we get deeper into this conversation. And not make it some kind of egotistical exercise where it feels good to tell other people what's really going on. That feels good, right? Oh, I know what's going on. You see, but you might be wrong. Hold your opinions loosely. And so, my perspective can change at any moment, fluctuate. But the more I consider the phenomenon, the more I start to lean towards the idea that they are animals just like us. They are animals. Animals can be spiritual. Saying they are animals doesn't discount their psychic abilities. Look at the Catholic saints. Allegedly, some of the Catholic saints were levitated and bilocated and all kinds of spooky things. And then you have stories like that applying to other people from other traditions, Buddhists, and so forth. Just because the intelligence behind UAP might be more developed than us in terms of psychic abilities does not mean they are not animals. Those two things do not contradict each other. I think a huge problem within the UFO community is the UFO culture echo chamber that we often are oblivious to. We think that our perspective on the issue is just us striving to be objective and calling it like we see it, but we don't acknowledge the degree to which how this conversation being so fringe and tiny has impacted our perception of this enigma. I feel very strongly that if there was no cover-up, collectively, the UFO community would perceive the phenomenon very differently. There would be a lot less people assuming that it's all love and light. I really believe that. Because I think the reality is a lot more, I'm going to use the word, somber than all love and light. Because ultimately, it's my opinion that I will hold loosely that the phenomenon are animals. And if you have a spiritual perspective, well, animals still have spirits, just like humans have spirits. So, looking at UFO history and seeing all these weird abilities does not discount the idea that they are animals that have needs, physical and otherwise, just like we have needs, physical and otherwise. And I know that David Grush's opinion is he thinks they're indifferent to us, kind of like how we might think of a mountain lion in a cave somewhere. We know it exists, and we may study it at times, but we're not like emotionally infatuated or intertwined with the existence of that mountain lion. But look, I mean, the government has covered this up for so long, and one of the fallouts of that, unfortunately, is we begin to think we understand something that we really don't understand, and our biases just get out of control. Like I said, if there was never a cover-up, I think the UFO community would perceive the phenomenon very differently. Because the fringe UFO community, our opinions would have to, they would have to deal with the opinions of academia and world governments and all our institutions and 8 billion of us. And that would be like a mechanism that would sort of discourage people for being so certain about something we have so little data in. The UFO community is an artificial construct that is a result of the cover-up, and it discourages objective thinking, in my opinion. And this is why we need transparency. That's all I got to say about that. Please subscribe. If you'd like to support this channel, you can check out my merch shop where I sell t-shirts. You can become a patron. You can become a YouTube member. You can give me a one-time donation. All those potentialities can be accessed in the description box below. Or you can just slap a like on this bad boy, and I'll appreciate it so much. Thank you so much for watching, and I look forward to seeing you in the next episode. Booyah. Special thanks to all patrons, YouTube members, those that have bought merch, those that have given me a one-time donation. I couldn't do without you. Thank you so much. See you in the next episode.